Sponsored by Dennis J. Courtney, M.D., Director of the Courtney Medical Group, located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray, Pennsylvania. For more information or to make an appointment, call 724-942-3002. That's 724-942-3002 for Dennis J. Courtney, M.D.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to AM Impact on Your Health. AM Impact on Your Health, where every day our goal is to have you learn at least one thing to help you live better and longer. AM Impact on Your Health is heard each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 9 o'clock. I'm Dr. Dennis Courtney, and I'm with you each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 9. AM Impact on Your Health, for each day you'll find current medical news, knowledgeable guests, fascinating health topics, and of course, where we do encourage you to call in to join in. Today, we join up with a gentleman, well, we just met a couple of weeks ago. He probably is the most knowledgeable guy I've ever seen on gut issues, practically speaking. In fact, his website is called gutsense.com. You may want to dial that website up. A plethora of information awaits you there, besides a way to get his exciting book entitled Fiber Menace. We discussed fiber, a tremendously amount of information about fiber, literally 2 weeks ago. And now we are back with Konstantine Monastyrsky, a Soviet citizen a number of years ago, now, of course, an American, who has dazzled us with his acumen on the fiber issue. We now take up a secondary issue very much related to the fiber, one that I believe plagues a lot of Americans, and maybe Russians to boot. That, of course, is constipation. The discussion of constipation will be part 1 today, part 2 on Wednesday, with our featured guest, Konstantine Monastyrsky. You want to stay and pay attention today. Now, if in the course of our discussions with Konstantine, you want to call in to ask a question or make a comment, that number, of course, as always, will be 412-825-6262. That's 412-825-6262, and I'll give that number additionally throughout the hour. Now, let's take a look at the schedule as it shapes up and as I know it at this current time. Konstantine, our guest today and Wednesday, just mentioned that to you. We'll be talking about constipation on both days. Never have I had a show completely on this topic. And to have two back-to-back, I think should let you know about how I think this will be covered. I think it's going to be a textbook, and we'll definitely go into the archives and frequently called upon by you in the future. On Friday, we are going to open it up. It'll be the first chance we've had to have an open phone session with you, and we'll leave it that way for Friday. It'll be open phones. You can call up and ask any question you would like to with respect to any of the topics we've discussed over the last month. As we turn the page and get into the month of October, Faye Houston will be our guest on the 3rd of October, next Monday. Of course, she was with us once before talking about her own personal saga with an affliction that she just could not shake. But I tell you what, you have to give her an A for effort, an E for effort, however you want to make it. But nonetheless, she's written a book entitled Silent Enemy, Environmental Illness and a Woman's Search for a Cure. Faye Houston, our guest on the 3rd. Dr. Vava Vavoom herself will be back on the 5th talking about weight loss, sort of picking up maybe where she left off with a webinar, which I did not get a chance to listen to. I haven't heard any of you. You haven't called in to let us know if you listened to the webinar, how it went. Would appreciate that. On the 6th, we're back in the saddle with MCG testing, multifunctional cardiogram testing that have had to be prolonged, and hopefully we're on track to make that commitment on the 6th of October, resuming MCG testing. If you're looking for additional slots, if you've never had the testing before, you want to give us a call here at the office today, right after we get off the air. You want to ask for Kim, our office manager. The number here is 724-942-3002. And then on into the second week of October, David Brownstein returns with his new book that he took time off to finish in August, so we can certainly understand why he wasn't able to come aboard with us. He finished his book on the soy deception, and that'll be our discussion on the 14th. And that's about how it shapes up right now. In the news, even in the local newspaper, and here he is again. I've never met this gentleman, but Luis Fabregas is teamed up with Andrew Conti, evidently a series they're calling Code Green for not environmental Al Gore style issues, but bleeding dollars, evidently bleeding green when it comes to the medical profession. Now, Luis has been very helpful in instructing me about Pennsylvania Health Care Cost Containment Councils. This particular series, it is a series because the first installment was on Sunday. The second installment is today, and I'm guessing maybe all week you're going to be hearing more from Fabregas about what it costs to pay for the medical procedures we get done, the medical encounters we have. Clearly, yesterday's article brought to the forefront the idea that you don't have a clue about what things cost. You can't check, even if you wanted to check. As it turns out, he claims, most people would like to if they could, but it's all kept rather stealthy, all kept rather quiet to keep you from actually knowing. Maybe one of the reasons they wouldn't like you to know what things cost, because you as a consumer might then use the power of your need for the service to price it out. Anything else that you buy, you wouldn't buy a car, so says Fabregas, without knowing the cost of the car and allowing you to compare and shop around. You wouldn't buy anything without having that ability, except everything medical that you purchase. Whatever service you're being involved with, whatever you need to have done, you do so without even asking the question. Because you've been so dumbed down to think, well, I can't know that information anyway, so I guess I can't ask. And I think what's coming to the forefront is we better, as a people, start being able to ask. Get a load of this. They say for the same MRI that you can get, Aetna members could pay more than $3,100 in South Texas. That same MRI in South Florida costs $300. By the way, uninsured patients, you get the worst break at all, because if you'd like to buy this out of pocket, you end up paying $4,600. How can that be? $3,100 in one place, $300 in another, and if it's coming out of your pocket, $4,600. I wonder if you called up to get your MRI and asked them, hey, what's my insurance company going to be paying for this? Do you think you're going to get an answer? But if you actually knew the answer, would you shop it around? Well, Fabregas is saying you possibly could. A couple others here. An MRI that cost Aetna member more than $1,300 at a hospital in Pittsburgh can be had for $425 at a Monroeville clinic. Well, we don't know what hospital that was, and we don't know that Monroeville clinic, but evidently Fabregas backs it up with the investigation he's done. I turn your attention to the Code Green series, Bleeding Dollars. Fabregas, I think, has done it again. What a report. Okay, let's do this. Let's take a short break. In the interim, I'm going to go find the Ruski. Well, the Soviet, no, he is an American citizen. He is a knowledgeable American citizen. Things medical, and in particular, things gastrointestinal. We're going to be with Konstantine Monastyrsky upon our return. Be right back.
This is Dennis J. Courtney, MD. Have you become confused about how best to manage your health? It's no wonder. It seems that every time you turn on the television or radio, another expert has yet another suggestion for you to follow that seems to be reasonable enough, but no matter how dutifully you follow the instruction, it just doesn't quite produce the results that you were looking for. If this confusion sounds familiar to you, give us a call at the Center for Complementary Health, where we'll make some sense of the confusion based on a blending of traditional and alternative medicine that we've been perfecting over the last 7 years. We offer metabolic nutrition testing, immune system repair, natural hormone replacement therapy, chelation therapy, cutting-edge allergy correction, and a host of other safe and effective alternative therapies.
Dennis J. Courtney, M.D. is located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray. Phone 724-942-3002.
Have you been to the doctor lately? Was fatigue top of your complaint list? Even if your doctor asks you what you eat, the recommended 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day is a dream in your busy schedule. What if you learned of a product 5 years in the formulation that delivers 5 servings of fruits and minerals in just 1 ounce? That's right, it's Fruit of the Spirit. The blessings of Fruit of the Spirit are now formulated into a delicious whole fruit puree product rich in antioxidants and minerals. Your health is more than just a test result. It's a balance of physical, spiritual, and emotional factors. You work regularly to strengthen your faith. Let Fruit of the Spirit help cover your nutritional needs in a convenient and cost-effective ounce a day. Call 1-800-442-3793 for a special promotional offer. Fruit of the Spirit, a blessing for your good health. Fruit of the Spirit, 5 servings of fruits and minerals with no added sugars. That's 1-800-442-3793 for your good health. Call them now, 1-800-442-3793.
Hey, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back once again to AM Impact on Your Health. Heard here at KSB 620 each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 9 o'clock. We're here today on a Monday morning version of the show, but in waiting in the wings, a friend of ours that just introduced you a couple weeks ago, I think has dazzled you, certainly has done so for me, and his medical acumen with respect to all things gastrointestinal. Now, this gentleman, an interesting website, I ask you to go to it, called gutsense.org, and a book that we really were able to get into the guts of 2 weeks ago, entitled Fiber Menace. I recommend that book to you, equally available on the website. Just go to the website, you'll find a whole bunch of intriguing information awaiting you. Now, we covered a topic of fiber last time. Our guest at that moment and returning today seemed to know more about that issue than anyone I've ever come across before. A Soviet-born but American, he is now to the core. He's with us again. Let's say good morning and welcome back, Konstantine Monastyrsky. Konstantine, welcome aboard again.
Good morning, Dr. Courtney. It's a pleasure to be with you in this wonderful morning, and good morning to everybody in Pittsburgh. And thank you very much for your rousing introduction.
Well, I do mean everything what I say with respect to your acumen with respect to GI issues. Never quite found a person who could, which, by the way, is what you exactly did. When it comes to fiber, I believe you linked at least the possibility where this issue of fiber can produce every single disorder known to man between the mouth and the anus. You name it, if it's going on in the gut from mouth to anus, fiber potentially could be at its root cause. That's a pretty interesting way to sum up how to pull things together and make one concept apply to all. I salute you for that because no one's ever been able to do that for me.
Thank you, Dr. Courtney, and that is unfortunately correct. And even more unfortunately, my book and my work is not really based on my personal observations. It's not based on hearsay. It is based entirely on the mainstream research conducted entirely by the most established, most admired researchers in the United States of America and published in all the primary medical academic texts in journals such as The Lancet, or the Journal of American Medical Association, or the JAMA. And so what's really scandalous is that my work, considered controversial, well, in fact, there is absolutely no controversy in the sourcing of that information that came out in the book. And it's really interesting. And the back cover of my book says, well, listen, considering fiber prominence in today's diet, we should be like the healthiest country on earth, digestive health-wise, at least. But the statistic is completely different. Every 10th adult American has been diagnosed with an ulcer at least once in his or her lifetime, and this is connected definitely to our style of eating. And every fifth American, that's about 60 million, suffers from irritable bowel syndrome. And there is really no other reasonable causes to have this condition other than something having in the gut that is not really compatible with its physiological function. Every second adult is affected by hemorrhoidal disease. I mean, this is really a scary statistic. I mean, evolutionary, we wouldn't survive as species if every single adult by age 50 would have hemorrhoids. And every second adult over age 60 suffers from diverticular disease. This is happening when your colon is beginning to burst out of its seams and develops those diverticula, it's actually plural, that then cause so many grief to people who are older. Back to you, Dr. Courtney.
Well, how fiber ties in all that, I think I want to recommend once again, please get the book entitled Fiber Menace. It will enlighten you to the point where you will have a command of your entire set of GI issues that could be in front of you. You could be smack dab in the middle of this issue and not really appreciate the root cause of it. I can't speak enough about Fiber Menace. Please take us up on the invitation to meet with Konstantine Monastyrsky at his website entitled gutsense.org. By the way, Konstantine, could you help us out? Because I think we had a couple of questions that came to us while we were doing our shows on fiber. And I think they were realistic questions because I could hear in the question wondering, the person really wondering, geez, do I really have a fiber issue going on with me or not? So what I was thinking about was, how is it that one could know whether or not they really do need to pay attention? And I figured a couple of things to get this started, and then I'll see if you can fill in the blank. Here's what I mean by it. If you wake up in the morning and you have to have that cup of bran flakes so that you start your day so that you can count your fiber, I think you may have a fiber problem. You see what I mean, Konstantine?
Yes, I do. Fiber is an addictive substance. This addiction caused by the fact that fiber modifies the content of your large intestine. And it is called a bulking laxative. So if you eat some substance that can, as it is implied, will bulk up your stools, you have to ask yourself a question: is it really good for me? Imagine a situation where, for example, you will chew some bran and you will not swallow it, and just think about what is going to happen in your mouth. Well, a very, very simple thing in about just a few minutes from this point on, because your mouth, the same way as the colon, is full of bacteria, the fiber will start to ferment. And so your mouth and your colon will be an equivalent of a wine-making factory. And what happens when you make wine? Excessive acidity, alcohol, and a lot of gases. So if you, throughout the day, you feel bloated, or flatulence, or simple unease, or frequent urges, or pain, or cramping in your gut, it means something inside your colon causes those issues. And there is only one substance that can get into your colon undigested and start fermenting because of the bacteria content of your colon, and that substance is fiber. There isn't really anything else that can actually cause all of those problems, because anyone who ever studied human physiology knows that what you eat really doesn't become stools. Stools are made primarily from water, which is normal content is 70-75%. About 5% of what is called ash, or the residue, or what really remains from all the food that you have digested. In fact, if someone will make you a comprehensive stool exam, and a physician will find, or a lab test will find, any presence of undigested substance, you will be told right away, "Oh, dear sir, you have some problem. You have undigested particles in your stools." And this is really no good. So the only substance that legitimately, with the urging of most nutritionists and dietitians and physicians, will ever come into your gut undigested is called indigestible fiber. And that is the root of most of the problems most people have, and especially vulnerable to this plague are small children, because they have undeveloped bodies, essentially very small, very sensitive, and very active, and also older people who unfortunately do not function, whose bodies are not functioning just as well as the body of somebody who is younger.
Well, I figure if you aren't counting your fiber in grams, trying to reach some sort of a fiber goal each day, my guess is you're not having issues with fiber at all. But if you're counting, if you're listing, if you're picking up labels to find out how much fiber is in this thing to be able to help me, I believe that may be foretelling the fact that you have either pending or underway a serious set of GI issues either around the bend or in the straightaway. What do you think about that?
Absolutely correct. And another problem with fiber is that a lot of Americans are consuming so-called insoluble fiber. Insoluble fiber today is very broadly added to a broad range of products. It is added as filler, it is added as emulsifier, it is added as just a bulking agent. And unfortunately, it has one very nasty property. It inhibits assimilation and digestion of essential nutrients. So if you're taking supplements, or even if you're taking a medication, or if you're just consuming foods with an intent of absorbing all the goodness in those foods, it will not work, because if you have a lot of soluble fiber present in your gut or in your small intestine, actually, it will inhibit digestion. And this property, by the way, is being specifically used in fiber laxatives. The reason they work is because they inhibit digestion and assimilation of fluids. Those fluids surge into your large intestine, and they, in essence, they emulate or simulate diarrhea-like condition. And a lot of people saying, well, that's really great, I'm having my stools, normal stools, but in fact, you're not having your normal stools. So what you're doing is you're, sorry for using this word, defecating all the goodness that you were consuming with food. And when people ask me questions, Konstantine, why we have such a pervasive problem in this country with osteoporosis? Why there are so many people are malnourished even though they eat well? Well, the primary reason behind these issues is a lack of proper absorption inside your small intestine. That's the only organ that actually absorbs what you consume with food. And when you have a problematic absorption, your body will not be getting all those essential nutrients that your body requires for renewal, for self-maintenance, and for good health, good mood, good sleep, good sex, you name it. Back to you, Dr. Courtney.
Well, let's sort of change gears a bit. Actually, if you look at this as I had done so over the last few days, spending time on the fiber issue, which I believe is the initiator of a whole set of GI issues, as we just said, every single thing I think that's possible that could go wrong between the mouth and the anus does have a link, and that link is fiber. And that's really, I got to thank you, Constantine, because to find that link, I've never been able to see someone do that, link up all these various diseases in a way that made sense to me. You've done that, and that's why I recommend your book to others, Fiber Menace, because I believe the first chapter, right out of the chute, you don't waste time at it, okay? It's like a mystery novel where you solve it in chapter 1, and then you go on to talk about other items, but that first chapter of yours does set the pace for how fiber does lend itself to causing all these problems. However, we got to get to what I believe may be putting the cart, we maybe have placed the cart before the horse instead of the horse actually pulling it, because fiber becomes the issue that it is, I believe, because all of the focus and all of the attention paid on the bowel movement of the day, the fear that constipation may be looming around the corner, more than likely because individuals have had difficulty with constipation. Constipation is the horse. And what will follow will be an individual trying to compensate for a medical problem already underway. Let's set the stage for what I believe to be the biggest culprit that leads to the fiber abuse, and that is constipation. What do you have to say about that?
Well, just like every single medicine and every single substance that is addictive, fiber is also an addictive substance. And addiction comes from the fact that fiber will modify your stools, it will bulk them up, and once they bulk up, the next time around, let's say a year from now, you will drop fiber completely out of your diet, you will really get very severely constipated, because now the morphology of your stools is contingent upon having a continuous presence of that bulking agent. And incidentally, you may say, oh, what this guy is saying is heresy. But, you know, it is actually against the law in the United States of America to claim that fiber can be used as a laxative, that fiber actually has any effect on stools. And so the companies that market fiber laxatives or fiber supplements, they never use the word constipation. They always say regularity. Fiber will improve your regularity. Well, in fact, it will, because again, anything that you will use as a pseudo plunger, something to plunge out the contents of your large intestines, will indeed improve the function of your large intestines for a while. But let's think together, what if I will, let's say, will use a baking soda to wash my hands every day? In about a year from now, when I will go through the security check, I will no longer have any fingerprints notable because it will wash out the content. It will actually destroy my skin. So when you, using a similar analogy, if you do consume too much fiber, eventually your column will metamorphize, will actually change itself. It will change its anatomy in such a way that you will simply not be able any longer to have what is called normal stools, or how to describe this is a very touchy subject. Technically, if you look at an infant, infant doesn't have to make any effort to move bowels. And if you look at most children, if you recall yourself when you were young, you didn't have to make any effort to move bowels. In essence, normal bowel movement should be as unnoticeable and as quick as urination. And unfortunately, this is not the case. As what's happening, a lot of people go to the toilet, they experience tremendous pain, they strain, their blood pressure goes up. In fact, a lot of people actually get heart attacks right after visiting the toilet because it's
that is so true. Yeah, absolutely. That is true. Absolutely true. So, we're going to start off, ladies and gentlemen, let you know, I normally have to do a lot of write-ups when I have a guest on. Actually, Konstantine did his own write-up for me. If you'll just go to his website, anytime, gutsense.org, you will find on the opening page a list of 40 different questions, all circling around the issue of constipation and regularity. That being said, Konstantine, I think I'd like to skip and move through, tippy-toe through, these various questions because the entire discussion of constipation, by the time we conclude, will be so well covered that my listeners will have a compendium of everything they ever wanted to know about a bowel movement, but absolutely were afraid to ask. Is that fair enough?
Quite fair, and I just want to point out to all of your listeners that my writing is completely accessible, so it's much easier to read.
Well, let's just say that this will be maybe the first time anyone has ever taken you through this list, but what a great compliment. Your list, our show, will go hand in hand starting today. We've now made a pact, Konstantine. Let's move ahead. Let's start by asking this question, because it really does focus on this issue so clearly, the difference between irregularity and constipation. Am I only irregular? Am I constipated? How could people define where they are on the line of continuum with respect to these two processes of defecation?
Well, as you know, a few decades ago, the term constipation wasn't even used. It was a festivity. And then another term came around as in prominence as irregularity. And why there's this confusion between constipation and irregularity? Well, because if you go to see your physician and you say, "Doctor, I am constipated," and the very next question you will hear from your doctor is, "How often do you move bowels?" And if you say, "Well, it's every other day and it's very uncomfortable," and your doctor will look at you and will say, "Hey, dear, you don't have any problems because according to every single medical textbook, you don't even have to move bowels every day. Every third day, if you have a problem on the fourth day, then come to see me and I will prescribe you some laxative." So in essence, if you don't move bowels every day, as it's supposed to be, actually the proper way of moving bowels is after every major meal. This is the way our bodies were designed. You are irregular. But if you're moving bowels, if you didn't move your bowels within 3 days, then you're constipated. That's what medical definition is.
3-day rule. Okay.
Yes.
But, of course, you slipped in there the real regularity component, which is you really should have the bowel movement in conjunction with a large meal each day. And I'm so sure that very many people are able to speak of that form,
Very few.
regularity, okay? But I think we've now defined our terms. We know what is regular, what irregularity could be determined to be, and constipation with the 3-day rule. I think that's well understood now by our listeners. Let's start going through this myriad of questions appearing on your website that will define this even better. How about this one? One of the first ones that you listed, why do women, and I didn't know this, why do women get constipated more often than men? By the way, do they? And if they do, why so?
Yes, they do. And just keep in mind, I'm doing this work for over 10 years, and so I am on the receiving end of enormous amount of questions over emails during my speaking tours, and I spent several years working with patients in the physician office. So obviously, some of my judgments are subjective, but on the other hand, women probably know better that how bad this problem is. And the major reasons are obviously anatomical differences. Female body is very, very different from a male body. You have to keep in mind that rectum and the colon are the adjoining organs with female reproductive organs. And those female reproductive organs go through a continuous metamorphosis. And so it has a very profound effect on female physiology. Then you have to take the issues that, most men are not really that concerned. I mean, if you have like an urge, what you do is just you go to the bathroom, you don't pay attention to anybody, and you do your thing. And if you take most ladies, they're very, very concerned about, going to the bathrooms, and the dress is much more complex. So a lot of women will actually withhold the bowel movement waiting until they will get home, because they don't have to do it in public or in presumably dirty public bathrooms or what have you. And unfortunately, every time you restrain yourself from moving bowels, you run into a problem. Your stools dry up and enlarge. And as they dry up and enlarge, the next time around, it takes a tremendously more effort to actually move bowels. And obviously, it's not going to harm you if you do it only once a month or once a year, but most people are doing it every day, and most people are encouraged, especially when they're children, they're encouraged by their parents. Don't go to the bathroom in a school, it's dirty. Don't go in a public bathroom, it's dirty. Just wait until you will come home. And so children actually learn to this whole bowel movement, and this problem essentially precipitates a lifelong problem with constipation and irritable bowel syndrome. And obviously girls are more often thought about this by their moms or grandparents or even parents. Or imagine a situation where a father with a young girl, 5, 6 years old, goes for a walk or just takes her to a sporting event, and a girl says, "Daddy, I want to go to the bathroom." And you know what the daddy will usually say? "Darling, please hold it up until we get home." And that's how problems begin.
So there we go. Right on. Now that you have, given me the litany of why it is that women can become constipated more often than men, it makes such great sense. I just wouldn't have thought of it.
But this is all.
In that
But if I may add, this is only like 2 factors. Another very, very serious factor behind this female constipation issue, or predominance of female constipation, is the fact that women are much more conscious about health advice. And in fact, if you ask marketers to whom they market fiber laxatives and to whom they market fibers fortified cereals, they market it primarily to women. And women take this advice very seriously, and they consume fiber in droves, and because they are abusing the fiber, they became much more dependent on fiber, and obviously they develop a much more severe constipation into their 40s and 50s.
Great, making great sense. Thank you so much. We're going to move on. How about this? Why do some foods, and what foods in particular would be well known to cause constipation and maybe should be avoided? What do you think?
Well, there is only one food that can actually cause constipation, and the food, unfortunately, is fiber, or any derivative of fiber in your foods, such as fiber-fortified cereals, fiber-fortified breads. When companies add bran to cereals or to breads or to pasta, think what is bran? Bran used to be used as a livestock feed. It was never given to humans. And if you look at people who are older and listening to our program and they recall themselves when they were children 50, 60 years ago, most likely your mom will never give you an apple without taking a skin off. And she will say to you, don't swallow the seeds because they're dangerous. And why they were doing that? Well, because they were much more aware of the side effects of all those kind of foods with a high fiber content, and they were aware because it's not like today. Your child has cramps, you take him to a hospital, she or he gets an MRI or a CAT scan, and so what? A little surgery, insurance will pay for it. 50 years ago, if your child will have appendicitis, the risk of death was very, very high because the hospital facilities were not available or plentifully available. And in the third world countries, even today, people are very much aware of the fiber side effects, so they don't consume any fiber. Fiber is predominantly American invention, and in fact, fiber entered the mainstream and became a driving force behind this constipation issue only about 70, 80 years ago when companies that are promoting cereals made a very strenuous attempt to turn cereals, essentially just a derivative of wheat, into health foods. And how do you turn in a very practically an unhealthy substance? I mean, everybody knows cereals is just a sugar-laden food with tremendous amount of carbohydrates. Most people know that morning cereals are partially behind the problem we have in America with obesity and diabetes. But then, if you have such a bad rap for your product and you add fiber, then you can call it a health food. You can even go to American Heart Association, pay $500,000 contribution, and they will give you their badge, and it will say, well, fiber is good for you. Fiber is wellness. Fiber will prevent high cholesterol. Fiber will protect you from a heart attack. Unfortunately, it's not true. All the fiber will do is essentially it will sooner or later will become an addictive substance and a driving force behind constipation. All other foods, I hear from people that this food caused me constipation, that food caused me constipation. Foods don't cause constipation because all foods supposed to digest almost fully. There is only, like, if you consume fat, only 0.2, 0.3% of the fat will reach your large intestine. If you consume proteins, only 2 to 3% of those consumable proteins will reach your large intestine. If you consume dietary carbohydrates, digestible ones, 100% of them will assimilate in your small intestine. So technically, foods never reach the large intestine, and foods do not become the source of stools. Only undigested food, and the primary food that is not digestible, and it's specifically called indigestible, is fiber.
Wow, what an answer. Fiber is the only cause, and yet that's what we seek, to try to think that we relieve constipation. What a conundrum, what a vicious cycle to get trapped in, to think one should benefit the other when in fact you actually are asking for big trouble by eating that fiber. My goodness. We move on. What about stress? You mentioned here, does stress cause constipation? And if it does, how does it do it?
Yes, it does. And the reason why stress causes constipation, because, as you know, stress inhibits digestion. And assimilation of foods and the consumption of foods and the bowel movements, they're connected events. What happens is when you consume a meal, why did I say before that theoretically or practically you're supposed to move bowels after every major meal? What's happening? Well, here's what is happening. After you consume a major meal, your digestive organs recognize that there is something in them, and they start a process which is known as peristaltic mass movement, meaning a wave of peristalsis throughout the entire range of your alimentary canal, meaning from mouth to anus. And when this process is happening, that's when you perceive an urge to move bowels. And if you respond to that urge, you're doing the right thing. If you don't respond and you suppress it, then you stop yourself from moving bowels. Today, it is very likely that a lot of people will do it because they are in a subway, they're in a train, they're in a bus, they're in their own cars, they're in the office, they're in a meeting. But, when we were made up into humans, we didn't think a second about moving bowels. We would just step away and we'll do this natural physiological process the same way infants are doing. And that's how the problems precipitate. And when we are under stress, stress inhibits digestion. Stress causes digestive distress. Stress stops people from chewing well. Stress really prevents peristaltic mass movement. And so it is very likely that when we are under high stress, two things may happen to us. One is diarrhea, a very severe diarrhea, and it's very typical for a lot of women. And a lot of people have no clue what the connection is, but the connection is elevated blood pressure. When your blood pressure goes very high, and the body cannot normalize it very quickly, it uses as a column as essentially a safety valve. It essentially pumps the plasma out of your blood into the column, so you have this urge of fluids, and the fluids will cause diarrhea. That's a connection. And incidentally, fluids are also being dumped into the stomach, so when women are under great stress, or even men, and they throw up, that has to do with the same condition. So that's a connection, and it's very, very complicated. But once you realize what is happening, then you have to be very much aware, and you have to pay attention to your urges and to really go to the bathroom. And if you don't, then it is quite advisable to, because you cannot get rid of that stress event, it's quite advisable to use a palliative, and that palliative may be the safest form of laxatives that you can get.
Very complete answer. Let's move to one about another substance, alcohol. Is there a relationship between alcohol and constipation? Does alcohol cause it, or not interfere with bowel function at all? What is the role that alcohol plays?
Alcohol, again, may cause diarrhea, and incidentally, diarrhea may precede constipation. A lot of people, what you have to realize is that if you have a diarrhea event, and a lot of people expect to have stools the very next day, it takes quite a lot of time for the large intestine to form stools into a solid matter, and it's a very large organ, and it takes a considerable amount of time to move the formed stools all the way up to your rectum. It may take up to 3 days. So if you have a diarrhea event, and you don't have a stool the next day or the day or 2 days or 3 days, you are not actually constipated. But a lot of people think that they are, and that's when they begin abusing fiber, because fiber is considered the least innocent laxative or the least innocent palliative. At one side. On another side, when you take alcohol, what alcohol does to a lot of people, it is a relaxant. It relaxes our muscles, and unfortunately, a bowel movement will not take place when your muscles are quite relaxed. And incidentally, a lot of people who are taking medication for prostate problems, or for elevated blood pressure, or for neuromuscular problems, or even for irritable bowel syndrome, they also take muscular relaxants, and the same relaxants, just as alcohol, will prevent people from having a fully functional, normal peristaltic mass movement, and they will not experience an urge to go to the bathroom, and that's where they can become constipated, because what happens if you don't move bowels immediately, the colon is a very interesting organ. Its function is to pump out fluids out of your stools with intent actually to recover salt. And incidentally, low salt diet is also a very, very big cause of constipation, because if you don't consume salt, the moisture of your stools goes down, and when it goes down from 70 to 65%, which is the norm, or just down to 60%, it becomes dry and hard, and it makes moving bowels very difficult, very painful, may cause abrasions, may cause bleedings, may cause fissures, and or inflammation of your anal canal, and it's also behind hemorrhoidal disease, and so that's a connection. And alcohol, by the way, is well known as a dehydrating factor. So in addition to dehydrating you, in addition to removing sodium chloride from your system, in addition to relaxing your muscles, when you sum this all up, that's a connection.
Okay. We're going to take one more question now, and then we're going to take a short break. This question really intrigues me because I lived for maybe 6 years in the country of Mexico. I was visited many times by American family and friends, and we always had to be concerned about their travelers' diarrhea and travelers' constipation. By the way, both, but of course more famous is the issue of travelers' diarrhea. Is there such a thing called traveler's constipation?
Absolutely. Lots of people who travel on business or on pleasure, they are quite familiar with this issue. There are two components to traveler constipation. One is changing your time zone. When you change your time zone, it is very often may happen, and people usually moving bowels on schedule, early in the morning or in the afternoon. And now imagine you flew into Russia, and when it's 8 in the morning here, it's actually the middle of the day there, and in the middle of the day you may be in some museum. And so suddenly you have an urge to move bowels, and what you will do, you will suppress it because you're in the middle of some museum which has a very dirty bathroom. You wouldn't go to the bathroom. And that's how you start the vicious cycle. You don't go to the bathroom, you suppress the urge, your stools enlarge, they become drier. Next time you go, you have to strain, and when you strain, it causes pain, so you try to avoid next stools, and that's what travel causes. And the second component is, even if you don't change time zones, is essentially you change a style of eating. Usually when people travel, they consume much more food. They're not as they don't pay as much attention to their food consumption, and they also change their schedule as they sleep longer. Let's say, when I go to a resort, will I have a breakfast? No, I will have a brunch, and I will probably not get up as usual at 6 in the morning. I will get up at 11. And by doing this, again, you miss that natural, your regular schedule, your regular routine, and that routine, and breaking of that routine may lead to constipation, unfortunately, which then will be perceived as a travel with constipation, but in fact it has nothing to do with travel. If you will just emulate a similar situation at home, you will run into the exact same problem.
Same problem. All right, as you can see, folks, this man is loaded with information. Hopefully it's information maybe the first time you've ever come by it. In a lot of these cases, what I'm listening to now is the first time I've ever had this particular issue discussed so widely. We're going to take a short break just to let our guest today wet his whistle, get a chance to recover a bit. When we come back, a number of kiddie questions. So if you got children of your own, grandchildren, you want to pay attention to find out the issue of constipation in their lives. We return with Konstantine Monastyrsky in just a moment.
Want to help your family eat healthier? Instead of learning to disguise tofu in wondrous ways, how about some real nutritional power? If your family has the typical American palate for fries, pizza, and burgers, giving your family the blessing of good nutrition is a struggle. Fruit of the Spirit is the answer for your family's nutritional needs. Fruit of the Spirit is an all-natural, whole fruit puree made from fresh fruits native to the Holy Land with alkalizing minerals. Fruit of the Spirit was 5 years in the formulation, the work of a team of top nutritional experts with independent science to confirm its antioxidant power. 1 ounce a day provides the equivalent of 5 servings of fruits and minerals. Fruit of the Spirit is convenient, affordable, and delicious. Even your picky family will sing the praises of Fruit of the Spirit. Give your loved ones the blessing of good nutrition. Call 1-800-442-3793 for a special promotional offer. Fruit of the Spirit, a blessing for your good health. That's 1-800-442-3793. Call them now, 1-800-442-3793.
This is Dennis J. Courtney, M.D. Have you become confused about how best to manage your health? It's no wonder. It seems that every time you turn on the television or radio, another expert has yet another suggestion for you to follow that seems to be reasonable enough, but no matter how dutifully you follow the instruction, it just doesn't quite produce the results that you were looking for. If this confusion sounds familiar to you, give us a call at the Center for Complementary Health, where we'll make some sense of the confusion based on a blending of traditional and alternative medicine that we've been perfecting over the last 7 years. We offer metabolic nutrition testing, immune system repair, natural hormone replacement therapy, chelation therapy, cutting-edge allergy correction, and a host of other safe and effective alternative therapies.
Dennis J. Courtney, M.D. is located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray. Phone 724-942-3002.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back once again to An Impact on Your Health here on KHB 620 on a Monday morning version of our show. In wild anticipation, knowing that he would hit the ball out of the park, we have a guest today. He's speaking of all things about constipation. Everything you ever wanted to know about it, but either were afraid or figured, who in the heck would know all this to be able to answer it? But we've got him with us today. Konstantine Monastyrsky is plowing through the issue of constipation with us. Konstantine, are you still there, my friend?
Standing by. Thank you, Dr. Courtney, and welcome back to our program to everybody in Pittsburgh.
Let's move into a section I'll call the kiddie section because there's a cluster of questions appearing on your website that has to do with children. Parents are usually more concerned with children than they are themselves. If they're confused about their own function of elimination, they got to be doubly confused about kids. What about kiddie constipation? Let her rip. what can you tell our listeners about infants, toddlers, children, and the constipation that they may be undergoing? How so, and how to correct?
Fortunately, this problem among children is not as pervasive as among adults, especially older adults. But when it happens, it is a disaster. And unfortunately, this disaster is being made worse by the same pediatricians who are supposed to actually teach young parents to take good care of their children. If you go onto most medical websites dedicated to the subject, here's what you read on this website, and it's really scary. This is from the very famous WebMD, Your Baby Bowels and Constipation. It says, there is no medical harm in the stools staying in the body for a long time, and the frequency of your baby bowel movements, BMs, does not really define true constipation. So if a young parent will come to a physician, to a pediatrician, and will say to this doctor, Doc, my baby is not moving bowels the way she used to do it or the way it's supposed to be, that pediatrician may check out his or her medical reference textbook and will say there isn't any problem with it, it's perfectly normal. But in fact, it isn't normal. It is a tragedy, because if your child is not moving bowels on time, the stool, just the same way it is happening in adults, the stools will enlarge, they will dry up, and the next time this baby goes to the bathroom or has to move bowels, he or she will experience tremendous pain, tremendous discomfort, tremendous displeasure, and this may lead to intentional withholding of stools. And when children will, and they're kids, they're like one and a half, 2 years old, they cannot verbalize this thing. They cannot explain it to you. And so by the time you notice, most likely your child will have a fecal infection, meaning an accumulation of a very large stools that can no longer be moved naturally, and this becomes a medical emergency. And what happens next? You take your baby to a hospital. Your baby is thrown right away on the CAT scan machine. She or he will get a dose of radiation similar to about 400 to 500 abdominal X-rays, regular X-rays. I mean, years ago, Dr. Courtney, if you recall, if you send the people to a person to have an X-ray, a person will say, "Oh, Doc, no, I don't want it. It's scary. It's radiation." Well, and now we take a 2-year-old baby because of a fecal infection, and we'll throw this baby on the CAT scan, and this baby at 2 years of age will get an equivalent of 600 doses of radiation, or about the same dose of radiation as somebody on outskirts of Hiroshima or Nagasaki was getting in when they were exposed to atomic bomb. And so the small little problem occurring in that early in the age can then precipitate a very long life of medical disorders, medical problems, medical interventions, drugs, and eventually it will end up in cancers. And as you know, cancers today among children just are tremendous. We look at autism. I made a connection between autism and constipation, and autism today is 10 times what it used to be 20 years ago. And what else happens in the last 20, 30 years? Well, fiber became prominent in the American diet. And so now I hear from a lot of parents, they're giving their children who are 1-year-old fiber because they think it will improve their bowel movements. But, I mean, come on, think about a small, tiny little baby. If you're an adult and you have a fairly large intestine, I mean, and you take 20 grams of fiber, the fiber will absorb 10 times its volume of water and will turn into 200 grams of stools. And now we're suddenly dealing with a 2-year-old child with a total weight of maybe 20, 30 pounds, and you're giving this baby the same amount of fiber that you will take to presumably improve their bowel movements and their digestive health, and suddenly this baby gut is bursting from all the quote-unquote goodness because it ferments, creates a lot of gases, a lot of bulk, and suddenly you have now a problematic child on your hand with a problematic health. And once the child is beginning to experience problems with health, then everything goes smooth, acumen for education, interest, and everything. And the child may become aggressive or passive, and it's really pretty bad. And it's all from a very, very simple substance, dietary fiber in their diet, and the outcomes of having the substance. And by the way, if your child is refusing fiber, children, like let's say you have a cat, try to give some fiber to your cat. What will happen? A cat will simply reject it, and if you will push it, if you shovel it down the cat's throat, he or she will throw it up. Children are much more gullible. They are much easier to convince, and we have tremendous sway over children. But when you see your child resisting some kind of food, be it broccoli or be it anything else, the reason this resistance is there is not because the child can verbalize or because the child has intellectual acumen to make an evaluation of the kind of a food, but because child feels digestive distress, meaning pain, discomfort. And the only reaction children have by refusing a substance. We as adults can, again, convince ourselves it's good for us and we can ignore discomfort, but children can't because they're so much more sensitive to all those issues, to all those substances.
Hit it out of the park. Brought two things to my attention with that one. It differs the adult from the child. That is, the child will avoid. The adult having issues of constipation will seek to relieve the constipation. The child having issues of constipation will seek to shun the act of defecation and make the problem much worse, potentially life-threatening, even requiring hospitalization. And that CAT scan example that you gave, that is true. If you go to a hospital with a kid with abdominal distress, you're getting a CAT scan. You won't be able to get out, and you'll get that 500 abdominal X-ray blast to a little kid because of the constipation issue, when in fact it wouldn't and shouldn't be necessary at all. Great points. We are coming right up. We are right there, Konstantine, at the gong where we're going to be signaling our way out of here. Rather than being abruptly and inappropriately interrupted, I thought maybe we'd take the time just to bring it to a conclusion. By the way, there go those bongos. We're not even halfway through the list, folks. This guy has 1,000 answers to give you on this subject. Promise to be with us on Konstantine where we can take this one on again?
I promise to
Okay.
join you next Wednesday, and thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to express those very controversial views. But to all our listeners, there is no money attached to going to my website. There is nothing there to buy. It has an entire text of my second book entitled God Sends How to Reverse and Prevent Constipation and Irregularity in Children and Adults. And if you are a parent of a young child or if you are a guardian to an older person, I urge you to visit this website and to read its content and to study it, because unfortunately constipation and all the issues around it are behind pretty much all of the diseases that plague small children and older people.
Thank you so much.
Dr.
Thank you so much. Gutsense.org. We'll be back with Konstantine on Wednesday. See you then. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
KM Impact on Your Health is sponsored by Dennis J. Courtney, MD, Director of the Courtney Medical Group, located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray, Pennsylvania. For more information or to make an appointment, call 724-942-3002. That's 724-942-3002 for Dennis J. Courtney, MD.
Whether you are a muscle man and spend hours